Welcome to The World Today. I am Amarachi Ubani. We're still taking reactions to the shocking video that made its way online. An IS militant beheading U.S. journalist James Foley. Understandably, without surprise, the U.S., UK and France detest the apparent beheading of Mr. James. The 40-year-old has reported extensively across the Middle East, working for U.S. publication Global Post and other media outlets, including French news agency Agence France-Presse. The jihadist group released that video of Foley missing in Syria since 2012, saying his killing was revenge for U.S. airstrikes on its fighters in Iraq. Foley's mother, Diane, said he gave his life trying to expose the world to the suffering of the Syrian people. We have that video coming up. We strongly advise you to watch carefully, as much later the IS militant begins to behead James Foley in that video. So viewer discretion is strongly advised. We're waiting President Barack Obama's statements, which he's supposed to give later today. In the meantime, a White House National Security Council spokeswoman, Caitlin Hayden, has said, and I'm quoting here, "If genuine, we are appalled by the brutal murder of an innocent American journalist." Here's what the United Kingdom had to say about the video.
That James Foley, after 38 journalists have been killed in the course of his job in Syria, but this killing is the worst of all killings of journalists in Syria, because the fact that he has been beheaded, this video, which all that scene set up to try to intimidate the rest of the world, and especially the US government, it's terrible to see that journalists who went there on the field only to report as used as weapons, but they are killed for a terrible blackmail.
Well, let's get more on this now. Jeff Young of the VOA joins me now via Skype. I believe he does have more on what's been going on. Jeff, thank you for joining us on The World Today. It's a really shocking video, and I can't imagine watching from beginning to end. An IS militant actually slaughtering James Foley in that video. How is the United States reacting to this?
Like anyone would react to it. There's shock and horror in seeing something like this. But you have to remember, what is the purpose and motivation of the Islamic State to engage in such a hideous activity? It's called psychological operations. This is, as we've mentioned before, to bolster enthusiasm among their supporters and to recruit. And it's also meant to intimidate. By cutting somebody's head off, you're projecting an image of, when we come to your town, we are in charge. We will be the people in power. So even though this was an American beheaded, the audience for this is very definitely in the path of the Islamic State in Iraq and other areas, because the point is to make it clear, they want to be in charge, and they will do it by any means possible. And here in the United States, and among all of us in the news community, please understand, I was just in Iraq a month ago. That could have been me. I was a bit taken aback by it myself. I mean, I felt this personally because it could have been. And as far as the United States policy goes, think about this. If we had thought we can't suffer casualties, there would have never been a D-Day invading in Normandy and freeing Europe from the Nazis. There would have never been an Iwo Jima fighting against the Japanese to try to end the Pacific War. Yes, this is shocking, but it doesn't change United States policy, which is to aggressively deter and destroy the Islamic State.
And I can only imagine, Jeff, that would probably form the basis of President Barack Obama's speech when he speaks much later on the incident. You were just talking about it not changing U.S. policy towards Iraq.
Well, we have definitely stepped in on the side of the Peshmerga and the Kurdistan regional government and the central government in Baghdad We are solidly supporting their efforts to get ISIS, to get the Islamic State out of that country and maintain peace and order. The United States is fully committed to this. The airstrikes are only part of it. Supplemental munitions and weapons for both the Kurdistan regional government's Peshmerga and also for the government of Iraq's Iraqi army. All of it's in the cards, because what needs to be done now in a multinational effort is to stop the Islamic State and erase it from Iraqi soil and from anywhere.
Jeff, I'd just like to talk more about your experience since you were just recently in Iraq. How dangerous is it for journalists who are covering such volatile areas such as Iraq? I mean, James Foley had been with the militants since 2012. How dangerous is it covering the crisis on the ground?
It's not flippant to offer an expression that I have heard many times from colleagues like myself who have been in Iraq, and that is, everything's fine until you're dead. You can go around a corner and suddenly there they are. You can be driving down a road and suddenly a vehicle passes you and open fire on you. Everything seems to be normal until something happens. Perhaps that's a little bit difficult to convey, but to anyone who's ever been in a conflict situation, this is crystal clear. The danger is around you at all times. I was aware of it every moment that I was in Kurdistan. When I was in safe areas, I still knew that just outside or down the street or around the corner or 10 kilometers away, danger was there. While I was on security patrols embedded with the Peshmerga, I was on security operations maintaining peace and order in Kirkuk. But just 25 kilometers down the road on the way to Tikrit, there were other Peshmerga units that were in active combat against the Islamic State. So they're everywhere. And like in other insurgencies, they can blend back into the population. They can come out and attack and then disappear and then reappear. It's a very difficult thing, but this is how insurgencies are conducted.
Thanks, Jeff. I guess this only goes on to show how dangerous the life of a journalist can be. You're practically leaving your life to chance being in Iraq. Thanks a lot, Jeff Young. Our thoughts and prayers with James Foley's family in the United States. On to a different kind of murder, now this one committed on U.S. soil. Attorney General Eric Holder is due in the town of Ferguson, Missouri, to diffuse tensions following the police shooting of a black teenager. Mr. Holder promised a full, fair and independent investigation. Ferguson has now seen 10 nights of often violent clashes between police and demonstrators since the shooting of Michael Brown, who was unarmed at the time. In the meantime, community leaders have continued to appeal for calm and for healing.
Without surprise, it remains one incident which has not only drawn criticism, but caused racial tensions. And despite an appeal for calm by U.S. President Barack Obama, protests continue, but they are mostly peaceful. Street protests in the predominantly African-American community of about 21,000 people have been punctuated by looting, vandalism and clashes between demonstrators and police every night since the unarmed 18-year-old Michael Brown was killed by a white police officer. In the hours after darkness fell on Tuesday, protesters were notably fewer in number and more subdued than on previous nights, with more onlookers milling about the fringes